Have you ever considered that your very presence might be saying more than your words ever could? That before you even speak, something within you has already entered the space, shifted the atmosphere, and stirred something unspoken in those around you? This isn't your imagination, it's your energy field. Your aura is the unseen force that walks ahead of you, the silent signal of your inner life, the emotional signature of your soul. Carl Jung called it the self, the mysterious center where your conscious identity meets your deeper, eternal nature. And when that self is aligned, it radiates, it pulses, it arrives before your body does, and lingers long after you've gone. Your aura is not decoration, it is communication. It is memory, intention, and truth vibrating in real time. And for those who are deeply in tune with themselves, that vibration becomes palpable. Some people are drawn to it, captivated without knowing why. But others feel something they don't expect. Discomfort, intimidation, even irritation. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your light stirs their shadows. Your coherence awakens their inner confusion. And the unconscious prefers to remain unbothered. This is why the most magnetic people often feel misunderstood, avoided, or even resented without cause. Not because they are too much, but because they are fully present. From ancient cultures to modern psychology, we see the same truth emerge. There are those rare individuals whose presence speaks louder than their words. The shaman whose arrival softens a village, the quiet woman whose gaze silences a room, the man whose stillness stops conflict mid-breath. These are not just charismatic personalities, they are souls in alignment. Their aura is not accidental, it is earned through self-knowledge, through the work of becoming who they truly are. In this video, we'll explore 13 signs that your aura holds this kind of power, the kind that disturbs what is false and awakens what is real. So, stay with me until the end. You may finally understand why some people pull away from you and why that's actually a sign of your strength, not your flaw. You'll begin to see that your difference is your gift. And if you haven't already, subscribe now to stay connected to insights that honor your transformation. There are some individuals who pass through a room like shadows, unnoticed, unanchored. But then there are those whose presence imprints itself in the air, even long after they've gone. You don't remember what they wore, or even what they said. You remember how they made the room feel. You remember what stirred inside you the moment they entered. This is not charisma in the traditional sense, it is resonance, a soul vibration so coherent that it registers before the physical form does. Jung understood this as the psychic imprint of the self, a presence that transcends the visible, that reveals itself not through appearance, but through energetic congruence. When the inner and outer self are no longer at war, a quiet magnetism arises. It is not forced. It does not seek to impress. It simply is. This is the kind of presence that cannot be manufactured because it comes from alignment, from the long, often painful process of integrating one's inner contradictions, wounds, and truths. The person who has faced themselves deeply carries a weight, a texture, a density that the unconscious mind of others can sense, even if they can't explain it. Some will call it an aura. Others will say, there's just something about them. What they're sensing is energetic integrity, the rare consistency between thought, feeling, and action. And it is unforgettable. Like a scent that reminds you of a forgotten time, or a melody that awakens buried emotion, this kind of presence stirs something ancient and emotional in others. Not everyone will welcome that sensation. In fact, many will project onto you what they have not made peace with in themselves. You may find that your presence, without meaning to, becomes a mirror, and while some will be drawn to that light, others may resist, misunderstand, or even retreat from it. But do not shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You were not meant to be invisible. You were made to reveal the truth by simply standing in your own. And that, more than anything, is why your presence leaves a mark that time cannot erase. There are some presences that enter a space and leave it unchanged, but yours is not one of them. Yours is the kind of energy that awakens what others have buried. You don't speak it into existence. You simply walk into the room and something stirs. People either feel seen or exposed, safe or startled. Because your aura doesn't ask for permission, it simply mirrors back what is unspoken in the soul of another. As Jung taught, every human being carries a shadow, the disowned parts of ourselves we had to silence in order to belong. These pieces are not dead. They wait in the unconscious, and they react. When your energy is intense, sincere, and aligned, it presses against those locked doors. And what happens next depends entirely on the one who receives it. For some, your presence will feel like truth knocking. For others, it may feel like an intrusion, but the activation is the same. People may suddenly dislike you without knowing why. You may become the target of judgments that have nothing to do with you. What they reject is not you, but the reflection of themselves that they're not yet ready to face. You become the mirror, involuntarily illuminating suppressed desires, unrealized potential, or hidden pain. To the unconscious mind, that's uncomfortable, and discomfort often wears the mask of defensiveness, irritation, even aversion. But there is a luminous side to this as well. For those who are ready, your presence becomes something sacred, a catalyst, a key. They feel braver, more alive, as if your energy cracked open a part of them they had long forgotten. You offer no advice, yet they walk away changed. You don't preach, yet they sense possibility. This is the paradox of carrying potent energy. It doesn't adapt to the room, it expands it. You are a portal, and people pass through you into themselves. And not all are prepared for that. So do not take it personally when some resist or retreat. They're not responding to your action, they're reacting to your essence. Your aura reveals what the world often hides, and some will flee from the mirror while others will move toward it as if it's the very light they've been aching for. In a world obsessed with intellect, words, and appearances, there exists a deeper language spoken not through speech, but through presence. And those who are still attuned to it, the instinctive ones, can hear it loud and clear. Animals, children, and even the natural world respond not to your achievements, your posture, or your carefully chosen words. They respond to your energy, your emotional coherence, your invisible frequency. This is where your aura speaks for you. A dog doesn't care about your resume. A child doesn't notice your designer clothes. The trees don't bend for titles. What they feel is who you are beneath the layers. They recognize the truth of your vibration. Animals read you the way the unconscious reads a dream, symbolically, energetically, without translation. They sense what lies beneath the mask. Your fear may hide behind a smile, but to them it is as loud as a roar. Your inner calm may not make a sound, yet they gather around it like a fire. This isn't magic, it is instinct, primal intelligence. Jung taught us that the unconscious understands symbols and archetypes. Animals and children live in that realm. They haven't been pulled out of it by too much thinking. They still see with the soul. When your aura is steady, clean, and anchored in truth, animals approach you without hesitation. A cat may curl into your lap. A bird may not startle when you pass. It's not because you did anything. It's because your energy feels like home. Children, too, are drawn to that same frequency. Before they even have the words to name what they feel, they sense it. Your warmth, your presence, your honesty. An imbalanced energy may make them fidget, but a grounded, authentic aura calms them like a lullaby they remember from somewhere they can't describe. This is the quiet miracle of your presence. It doesn't require effort. It doesn't come from performance. It comes from alignment. The more inwardly integrated you are, the more nature recognizes you as one of its own. And that, perhaps, is the clearest sign of all. When the instinctive world bows not to your image, but to your essence. There is a strange discomfort that follows you into rooms, one you didn't create, yet are often blamed for. You enter with no intention to dominate, no sharp words or grand gestures, only a quiet self-possession that unsettles. And still, you watch people stiffen. Conversations shift, smiles tighten, voices rise in artificial cheer. It's as if something silent in you has pressed against the walls of their performance, revealing cracks they didn't want seen. This is not because you are threatening. It is because you are real in a world that often is not. Carl Jung called the persona the mask we wear to survive society, and many have come to believe the mask is who they are. So when someone walks in without one, unapologetically whole, centered and unbothered, it's not just surprising, it's terrifying. Because your presence doesn't reflect their image, it reflects what they've hidden behind the image. You don't try to prove anything. You don't perform. And that alone exposes the performance around you. Authenticity has gravity. It doesn't shout, but it pulls. And that pull unravels whatever is built on fear. When your aura is in harmony, when your inner world isn't leaking anxiety or seeking approval, you emit a rare energy, coherence. People feel it. Some admire it, others misinterpret it. They project insecurity as if it were your intention. They see arrogance where there is only stillness. They read judgment in your silence, coldness in your clarity, superiority in your peace. But what they're really reacting to is the unfamiliar feeling of not being able to hide. Because you don't play the game, you highlight its futility. Because you don't shrink, you unconsciously challenge those who live in compromise. You are not aggressive, you are aligned. And alignment is disruptive to those who are fragmented. You are not here to dim your light, to soothe someone's fear of the sun. Toning yourself down to fit into an illusion would not be kindness. It would be quite self-betrayal. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fumble for stories to explain your presence. What they call intimidation is really just their first encounter with authenticity. You don't overpower, you reflect. And to those who've only known absence, that reflection feels like confrontation. But your presence is not the problem. It is the mirror. There is a silent phenomenon that follows those with a powerful aura. You don't have to speak, explain, or perform. You simply enter, and something in the atmosphere reconfigures itself around your presence. Sometimes you notice it, a sudden stillness, a hush that wasn't there before, glances shifting, postures correcting, a subtle pause as if the room is remembering itself. Other times it happens without your awareness. But regardless, the field around you changes. This is not domination. This is not control. It is the natural gravity of energy that has become centered, true, and alive. Real power is never loud. It does not push. It harmonizes. Like a tuning fork in a dissonant room, your presence doesn't demand attention. It creates alignment. Barbara Brennan, energy healer and author of Hands of Light, teaches that the human energy field extends far beyond the skin. It holds emotional memory, spiritual vibration, and a kind of psychic fingerprint. When someone enters a space with an aura that is coherent and whole, that field interacts with others automatically. It speaks without words. It informs without trying. And when the message it sends is truth, the air itself adjusts. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as symbolic presence. To Jung, each of us carries unconscious archetypes, ancient images that awaken something in others, not by intention, but by resonance. You may represent the seeker, the wise one, the warrior of integrity. Your presence becomes a mirror, a catalyst, a silent invocation. And so, without saying a word, your being invites others to remember who they are or confront what they've forgotten. That is why people often feel something shifted when you walk in. It is not personal, it is vibrational. Coherence disturbs what is scattered. It invites harmony, but also exposes dissonance. And this is why some people grow quiet around you, while others resist or recoil, not because you tried to affect them, but because your energy carries order, and order always stirs what is out of tune. You don't need a spotlight. You don't need recognition. Your aura is already doing its work. Wherever you go, the field adjusts. The space remembers something sacred, and nothing remains quite the same. There comes a moment when the soul can no longer bear its own betrayal, when every compromise, every silence, every act of pretending to be fine becomes too loud to ignore. That moment is not the end. It is your awakening. It is the spark that splits the false self apart. For too long, you were taught that survival meant adjusting, accommodating, and keeping the peace while you lost pieces of yourself. But healing begins the moment you no longer agree to be drained by what you never truly chose. That heaviness you feel isn't weakness, it's the weight of the lies you've carried just to be accepted. And that exhaustion isn't from doing too little, it's from carrying what was never yours to hold. The truth is, you were never meant to live in constant negotiation with your own soul. So this is your turning point. The day you stop asking permission to exist. The moment you stop proving your worth to people who only see your light when it serves their shadow. Begin again, but this time, not from the survival of sovereignty. Real freedom is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of boundaries that honor your essence. Even one honest no is enough to break the spell. Even one act of truth can dismantle years of self-abandonment. You don't have to fix your entire life today. You just have to stop lying to yourself. What you own, your truth, your voice, your time, can no longer own you. Start with what aches the most. Sit with the part of you that still wants to be chosen. And then choose yourself anyway. Say no to where you used to collapse. Say yes only where your soul feels seen. This is how you return, not by finding something outside you, but by no longer leaving yourself behind. The comeback you've been waiting for doesn't arrive in applause. It arrives in silence, in peace, in the deep knowing that you are no longer negotiable. Own yourself. Begin again. That is the real revolution. In a world that thrives on surface-level noise, you often find yourself quietly retreating, not because you lack the ability to speak, but because your soul cannot pretend. Small talk, harmless on the outside, feels like sandpaper to your energy field. You try to engage, you nod, you smile, you play the role society expects, yet inside something contracts. The words feel hollow, the exchange rootless. There is no nourishment in the performance. Your body senses the vacancy before your mind even names it. You feel the subtle ache behind your ribcage, the drift of your awareness, the silent whisper, "There is nothing real here." It is not arrogance, it is alignment. When your aura has matured, it can no longer tolerate the artificial. You become a vessel for presence, and presence, by its very nature, demands depth. It doesn't hunger for dramatic conversation or constant intensity, but it longs for truth, for sincerity, for something that touches the inner world. Carl Jung wrote that healing begins the moment we integrate what we've long ignored in ourselves, but shallow talk is the art of avoidance. It circles the truth without ever entering the sacred center, and your energy, simply by existing in its coherence, points toward that center. That makes people uneasy because you remind them of what they are avoiding. But this spiritual selectivity has a quiet cost. It narrows your world. The invitations grow fewer, the conversation is shorter, the rooms are quieter, and loneliness begins to settle in, not as a punishment, but as a sacred pruning, a clearing of space. The more your aura vibrates in truth, the more the false naturally falls away. And though it stings, this thinning is not a loss. It is a purification. Loneliness transforms into a sanctuary. Silence becomes your companion, not your curse. You find yourself alone, perhaps, but never empty. Because in this solitude, you no longer have to shrink, contort, or pretend. You finally belong to yourself. And that, in this noisy world, is rare power. One of the most revealing signs that your aura carries real power is the way other people's unspoken inner struggles begin to surface around you. You may walk into a room with calm intentions, speaking softly, simply being present, yet something in your energy awakens what others have long avoided within themselves. It shows up in strange, disproportionate reactions. Someone suddenly admires you with an intensity that feels disconnected from reality. Another person criticizes you sharply without explanation. Someone else quietly pulls away, unable to tell you why. And you stand there wondering, what did I do? The truth is, you did nothing. Your presence simply stirred what was already there. In Jung's understanding of the psyche, the shadow holds everything we have repressed, denied, or abandoned in order to be accepted. These forgotten parts do not disappear. They linger beneath consciousness, waiting. And when someone with a clear, authentic, integrated aura steps into their space, those buried fragments begin to tremble. Your energy does not expose their wounds intentionally. It exposes them because it is aligned, it is coherent, it is whole. And wholeness naturally reveals what is fragmented. This is why people may place labels on you that do not belong to you. They project strengths they have not yet owned or flaws they fear within themselves. Your calm may be mistaken for coldness. Your confidence may be perceived as arrogance. Your silence may be interpreted as judgment. What they see in you is often a reflection of what they cannot see in themselves. And this can be confusing, especially if you are someone who values harmony and connection. But Jung reminds us that projection is not an attack. It is a psychological process that happens when the inner world becomes too difficult to face directly. You simply become the screen onto which their inner stories are cast. This is why learning to recognize the difference between your truth and someone else's projection is essential. Not so you can defend yourself, but so you can stay rooted in who you are. Being a target of projection is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that your light is active. Light does not create shadow, it reveals it. And the brighter your aura becomes, the more clearly others will see what they have left unseen within themselves. This is both a challenge and a profound proof of your inner development. One of the most profound signs of a powerful aura is not how loudly you speak, but how deeply your silence is felt. In a world addicted to noise, constant commentary, and the performance of self, your quietness becomes something rare, almost sacred. Silence, when rooted in self-awareness, is not emptiness, it is containment. It is the conscious choice to preserve energy rather than scatter it across moments that do not require it. You are no longer trying to explain, impress, or belong. In stillness, you reclaim your essence. This is not the kind of silence born from insecurity or avoidance. This is the silence that radiates calm authority. It is the silence of someone who no longer seeks external validation because they are anchored within. When you walk into a room and say nothing, yet the air shifts, when your presence alters the frequency without effort, that is aura. That is the invisible resonance of self-possession. You do not speak loudly, but others listen. You do not demand space, yet others feel your presence. This is the paradox of inner power. It does not announce itself, yet it is undeniable. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole, of integrating all that you are into a unified presence. Your silence is a mirror of that integration. It says, I am not fragmented. I do not need to fill the void with words. I am at peace within. And that inner coherence is what others feel when you say nothing. You communicate not through volume, but through vibration. Not through noise, but through energy. Your energy, when held with intention, speaks louder than any speech. It tells the world, I am here, and I do not need to explain my worth. Those with loud voices may dominate a room for a moment, but those with strong silence leave a lasting imprint. They are remembered not for how much they said, but for how deeply they were felt. Well-placed silence becomes a language of the soul. It transmits dignity, confidence, and groundedness. In the end, one of the clearest signs that your aura is whole is when your very stillness becomes influential, not through force, but through the unshakable peace of being fully yourself. One of the clearest signs that your aura carries real power is something you may have experienced many times without fully understanding it. People confess their deepest truths to you. It can happen anywhere, in the most ordinary moments. You meet someone for the first time, and within minutes, they are sharing pieces of their past, wounds they have never spoken aloud, memories they thought were buried, fears they hardly admit even to themselves. Tears may surface without warning, voices tremble, and suddenly a simple conversation becomes a doorway into someone's inner world. This is not because you pry, pressure, or search for these revelations. It happens because your energy field feels safe. You open an atmosphere where masks loosen, where the weight people carry can finally rest for a moment. In your presence, there is no judgment, no rush, no performance. You are not trying to fix or advise. You simply stay present with whatever rises, and that presence becomes permission. Jung taught that the unconscious is always looking for a path to express itself. When it encounters someone whose energy is grounded, calm, and emotionally receptive, it senses a vessel capable of holding truths that have been locked away. You become that vessel. Your aura offers something rare in today's world: compassionate neutrality, the ability to sit with someone's truth without trying to reshape it. You listen with your entire being, and the unconscious recognizes this kind of listener immediately. That is why people speak. They speak more than they intend to. They speak before their mind can stop them. They speak because something inside them feels safe enough, even if just for a few minutes, to finally exhale. And afterward, they often look at you with surprise, sometimes with embarrassment, wondering why they revealed so much. But what happened was not exposure. It was released. It was the psyche finally finding a space where it could breathe. Your aura does not force vulnerability. It invites it. You do not extract secrets. You allow truth. Only those who have made peace with their own shadow can hold the heaviness of another without collapsing under it. That is why strangers confide in you. Why do loved ones say they feel different around you? Why do people often walk away lighter than they came? Your presence becomes a quiet form of medicine, not because you heal others, but because you give them room to heal themselves. There comes a moment in every human life when someone else's freedom feels less like inspiration and more like a confrontation. If your aura holds true power, you've likely seen this unfold in silence. You walk into a space with no intent to disrupt, no desire to challenge, and yet something in the air shifts. People glance, withdraw, and become uneasy. It is not your words that provoke them. It is your presence and what it silently unveils. Those who are still hiding behind carefully constructed personas often find your authenticity hard to bear. Not because you're loud, defiant, or rebellious, but because your very being exposes the mask they are still clinging to. You live without apology, and that alone becomes a mirror many are not ready to face. You do not point fingers or ask questions, but your existence asks one silently, like a whisper beneath the surface. And what about you? Are you still pretending? In a world that often prizes conformity over truth, your freedom becomes a subtle rebellion. You do not need to speak out against the system to challenge it. You simply live in alignment with who you truly are. That in itself disrupts, because your lightness, your courage, your untethered way of being reveals the invisible weight others still carry. It is not a condemnation, it is a contrast, and contrast often feels like a threat to the parts of others that remain in hiding. Jung taught that the self longs to emerge, yet most people negotiate with life through the mask of the persona. When you walk fully embodied in your truth, you unsettle the internal negotiations others are still making with themselves. Your energy does not accuse, but it awakens. It does not offend, but it stirs something beneath the surface. And that stirring is what they fear. Those with strong auras don't aim to disturb, but their presence often reveals what still sleeps in others. You don't need to convince. You don't need to explain. You just are. And that being becomes revolutionary in a world where so many are still performing. Your existence is the reminder that freedom is possible. And for some, that possibility feels more dangerous than any threat, because once they see you, they cannot unsee themselves. Have you ever stepped out of a room only to find that the silence left behind seems to whisper your name? That strange, lingering energy is no illusion. It is sign 12. When your aura carries depth, your absence is not empty. It speaks, not through noise or memory alone, but through energetic imprint, an invisible mark you leave upon the space and the soul of others. Your presence doesn't simply exist, it echoes. In a world that often mistakes presence for performance, you are a reminder that true presence is being, not doing. You don't command the room through volume or drama, but by the quiet strength of your inner alignment. And because you are fully there when you are present, attuned, sincere, and energetically grounded, your departure leaves behind more than emptiness. It leaves behind meaning. Jung believed the soul leaves traces wherever it fully shows up. This is the psychological weight of authenticity. You do not just fill space, you enter it. And when you do, something within others awakens. A quiet shift begins. Sometimes it brings comfort, other times it stirs discomfort. But whether it soothes or unsettles, your energy changes the atmosphere. That is the gravity of the soul that has been tempered, refined, and rooted in its own truth. After you're gone, others may notice the stillness more than your voice. The space may feel heavier or lighter, but never the same. They may not even understand what changed. They just know you were there. And more importantly, that some part of you still is. This is not because you imposed, it is because you resonated. Your presence penetrated the superficial surface and touched something deeper. That cannot be bought or imitated. It is not charisma. It is energy. It is essential. Some people are forgotten while they're still in the room. Others are remembered long after the door closes behind them. You belong to the latter. Your aura doesn't just show up. It leaves an imprint, a trace of truth, a scent of soul, a weightless weight that others carry without knowing why. You do not just pass through life, you stay even when you're gone. The final sign that your aura is powerful enough to unsettle others is perhaps the most misunderstood of all. What people feel around you, that quiet strength, that grounded clarity, that unmistakable sense of depth, did not appear out of nowhere. It was not gifted, it was shaped. It was carved through the long, private journey of facing yourself. The radiance others notice today was born from nights when you confronted your own shadow, when you sat with truths you wished you could avoid, when familiar parts of you crumbled so something more authentic could rise in their place. Many people imagine aura as a natural glow, something effortless or inherited. But those who carry real presence know otherwise. Jung often said that the self emerges only when one stops running from one's inner world. That is where your aura was formed, not in comfort, but in confrontation, not in praise, but in silence, not through perfect moments, but through honest ones. What others sense in you is the residue of everything you purified within, pain that was felt instead of being buried, lessons that were integrated instead of ignored, choices where you refused to betray your own soul, even when doing so would have been easier. Your light does not come from a life untouched by darkness. It comes from learning how to walk through your darkness without losing yourself. The power people feel around you is not aggression, it is coherence. It is the energy of someone who has met their own brokenness, tended to it, and chosen to return whole. And that kind of presence carries weight. It unsettles those who have not yet made the same journey. It stirs admiration in some, discomfort in others, and recognition in a rare few. Your aura speaks before you ever open your mouth. But what it says is not a declaration of superiority. It is a testament to process, to courage, to the deep beauty that forms when a person stops performing and starts becoming. When people say you have a glow, a magnetism, a different energy, what they are truly sensing is embodied truth, a soul that went through the fire and learned how to carry the flame without burning itself. You no longer pretend, you exist fully, and that presence, authentic and unfiltered, changes every room you enter. If this touched something sacred inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your presence here is not just support, it's resonance. And if you feel moved to give back, your donation becomes a quiet but powerful gesture that helps keep this light alive for others still walking in the dark.